Car enthusiasts have this thing about the Honda Type R badge. There was a time when only Honda's lightest and fastest and most exciting cars got to wear it. But over the last 20 years, some watered down models have diluted the formula of those defining early Type Rs. But now, the Civic Type R is back in Australia for the first time in 6 years. And this 5th gen model has taken a 90-degree turn since we last met, turbocharged for the first time, with Honda calling it a rebirth of the marque. This car has set a lap record at the Nürburgring, but it needs to be the most engaging car on the road to restore faith in the Type R brand. The Civic's most exciting rival is the unhinged and relentlessly entertaining Ford Focus RS. It's a hot-blooded hooligan that tore up the front lawn of the hot hatch segment last year. But while it brings huge engine performance and a driftable all-wheel drive setup worthy of YouTube stardom, it's perhaps not the easiest car to live with every day. Fitting that brief is arguably the most well-rounded hot hatch available, the much admired and immaculately presented Volkswagen Golf R. This is a car that delivers potent performance and regal refinement in equal measure. Hot hatch buyers have never been so spoilt for choice.
But which one of these hot hatches ultimately deserves to take pride of place in your garage? That's what we're here to find out, starting with a straight line performance test at the drag strip. All three of the cars here today have 6-speed manual transmissions. The Honda and the Ford don't actually have a choice in that regard, whereas with Volkswagen you can get a DSG auto in the Golf R. But in the interest of an even playing field and to keep the spread of retail prices closer, we have a manual car here today. Now what that does mean is no launch control, and it's just up to me and old-fashioned finesse to get the cleanest getaway and the best time out of it, which actually isn't that easy, not because the car overpowers the all-wheel drive system, but these manual cars have a tendency to bog down when lifting the clutch. A little bit of wheel spin off the line does actually help, and Volkswagen claims you can get a 5.0 to 100 out of this car. Past testing has shown that those numbers can be a little bit tricky to replicate, but we'll just give it our best crack and see what we can do. I think that's going to be the best we'll get out of it today. Now the Focus RS, compared to the Golf, is a doddle to launch. It's the only one of these three cars that does have a proper launch control function in the menus, but the quickest way to get it to 100 and down the quarter is to actually forget about that and simply stand on the throttle with the clutch in and then sidestep it from redline. It'll sound like mechanical abuse to anyone with a little bit of sympathy, but we're assured that these cars are tough enough, and just watch how this hooks up. It's a little bit sketchy at the top end there. This car kind of pogo sticks around a little bit. It is by far the most firmly sprung of these three, but it is so much fun. Now the Civic Type R is at an obvious disadvantage with only 2 driven wheels, but it is the lightest of the 3 cars here, and it comes within a whisker of the Focus RS's power to weight ratio. This has 164 kilowatts per tonne versus the Focus's 169. Now this does have a kind of pseudo launch control in that it'll only give you 3,500 RPM with the clutch in. Whether or not it could actually take more than that on a good surface would be interesting to find out. But anyway, let's see what it can do and whether it can match Honda's claim to 100, and then what it'll do to the 400 metre marker. So, a difficult car to launch, but the way that this thing puts on speed towards the end of the track is huge. It just hauls.
While the Type R is brutally quick once up and running, it can't quite match its all-wheel drive rivals off the line, and that shows in the numbers. But a straight line drag isn't a full measure of a car's character. For that, we need a good, twisty mountain road, where these three hot hatches all take a different approach to achieving a common goal.
Forget about all of the craziness going on outside for a second and have a look at the inside. It's not exactly at golf levels of fit and finish, but it's better than the Focus RS. This seat is fantastic, the best of the trio. The seating position as well is the best. And there's a real finesse to all of the controls. The brake modulation is excellent. It's got the most confidence-inspiring pedal feel right at the top. The engine is an absolute sweetie. It is a real triumph. Heaps of grunt. Obviously very different in the way that you have to drive it. And that's probably, again, one of the more interesting things about this car. Whereas the Focus RS will allow you to grab it by the scruff of the neck and take it right to the ragged edge, always on the balls of its feet, the Type R asks you to be more patient with it. You really need to be set up before you get to a corner and prepared to drive through it.
There are issues with the usefulness of the Civic's infotainment, some practical problems with its over-the-top styling, and a nagging feeling that those hard-to-swallow comic book looks will constantly need defending.
If you are a Honda fanboy, and there are many of you out there, you won't be disappointed by this car. If you're worried about how its character's changed through the turbocharging, then yes, there is definitely a difference. This car has a totally different sort of boosty top-end feel. I guess not that dissimilar to old school B Series and K Series VTEC motors that had that rush at the top end, but with much more ferocious torque delivery in this car. It takes some getting used to. It's an adjustment for the Type R formula, but it's something that I think stands up in its own right. And once you get a handle on how it goes about delivering its power, it's a really satisfying car to drive quickly. So the Focus RS, of these three cars, it's the oldest, if you count Volkswagen's half-generation step for the Mark 7.5 as all new. So does that mean that this car has fallen behind? Well, in terms of performance, certainly not. As we've already seen in the performance numbers, it's the quickest and it's the most powerful. And in terms of driver engagement, it is still right up there at the pointy end. This car has an immediacy about the way that it handles and steers that is so intoxicating. It is heaps and heaps of fun. That is what it does really well. What it doesn't do so well is driver comfort. You might be able to hear that it's quite a lot noisier inside than the Golf. It's also a lot bumpier. It doesn't really matter whether you've got the thing in normal or in sport mode. There is an independent button for adjusting the dampers, so you can have it in racetrack mode with the sharpest engine performance and a little bit of slip in the traction control, but still soften off the ride, but it's certainly not soft. You also sit way too high, which is a complaint we've had about the Focus RS in years gone by, but it's still a problem. And it does kind of compromise the way that you feel in the car. You don't feel quite as snug or as low down. On a day-to-day basis, definitely not as easy to live with as the Golf or even the Type R. But if you do drive out here a lot and you really want the ultimate in performance, this is the car. Volkswagen's unique point of difference with the Golf R formula lies in its sophistication and its ability to remain discreet. Of these three cars, it's certainly the easiest one to remain anonymous in. The other two stand out far, far more, and if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, then the Golf R is really the only one that ticks that box. It's by far the most elegantly presented inside and probably the most comfortable as well. The Type R is up there in its comfort mode in terms of ride quality, but overall the Golf is the car that covers distance the easiest. It's also extremely quick, faster in fact than its power figures might suggest. It's the least powerful of the three cars that we've got, but driven well, it is right up there in terms of its capability. The problem though lies in the way that it goes about that. And it's maybe stereotypical to say this, but the Golf R does lack a little bit of charm. It's extremely precise and it demands precision from the driver in order to get the most out of it. But if you're looking for pure excitement, it's not as easy to access in this car as it is in something like a Focus RS. Every control has a level of dampening in it. It sort of feels slightly softened off in the steering, in the throttle, in the brake pedal in particular, and in the clutch as well. It just doesn't have quite as much of a visceral feel to it. It's not to say that it's bad, and it's certainly a kind of car that you would adapt to and you would learn to enjoy, but if you are the kind of person who is buying a hot hatch in order to go out into the mountains and have a blat on a regular basis, then the Golf R might not quite measure up.
And it's for this reason that in the battle for ultimate hot hatch excitement, the Golf R comes in third. That leaves us with a two-horse race between the Civic and the Focus that's not as easy to split. The Honda is the biggest surprise package. It comes within striking distance of the Volkswagen's refinement levels, and it pairs that with thrilling precision and addictively frenetic top-end engine performance. On a point scale, it scores as highly as the Focus. But on an emotional and a dynamic level, it's the Ford that still delivers the highest of highs. It's the most transparent car here. A what you see is what you get larrikin with immediately accessible performance. Of these three, it's the Focus RS that's the hottest of hatches. A molten fireball that will make you wish for a special stage every time you go for a drive.